Oppenheimer has sparked discussion around the world. In India, because of a controversy about the film's use of the Bhagavad Gita, and viewers everywhere around the world are making up their minds about how this film as a work of art presents its complex, challenging moral issues of a scientist struggling with his responsibility for nuclear weapons. It is also a film that provokes discussion about world history and is an opportunity for us to think mindfully about world history. In this video, I'm going to set out the controversy about Oppenheimer's use of the Gita so you can make up your own mind about it. Julius Robert Oppenheimer was an American-German physicist who led an aspect of the Manhattan Project that developed the atomic bomb in America during World War II. And his scientific knowledge was used ultimately for the use of those nuclear bombs to destroy the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. The film presents the moral dilemmas experienced by Oppenheimer. Was this the right thing to do? Did winning the war justify the use of such a powerful weapon of mass destruction? Science is a powerful tool for good, but it can also be a powerful tool for destruction. And Oppenheimer expressed some regrets for the decision to use nuclear weapons after 1945. Indeed, Oppenheimer himself, in talking about the act of using these weapons of mass destruction, referred to an ancient Hindu epic, a poem from an ancient Hindu epic that described a culminating and destructive war. He referred to this in later life. Oppenheimer himself read Sanskrit and had an understanding of Indian and Hindu culture. Whether it was a very deeply informed understanding, I don't know. But the film director's placement of this quote from Oppenheimer in later life is highly controversial. The film uses a short text from this great Indian scripture and poem, which Oppenheimer himself actually cited in later life to describe his response to the use of the nuclear bomb he had created. The film presents Oppenheimer reciting this line from the great Indian epic, not in a regretful television interview, but in the midst of the passion of a explicit sex scene. The film is rated R. And this presentation of a line from sacred text has provoked an angry reaction in India, including calls by its information minister to cut the offending scene from the film for its Indian distribution. Why and what views do you have on this debate? If you are watching from India, why don't you leave a comment on the issue below? But while I explain the importance of the Gita for a Western audience. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is one of the main texts of the Hindu scriptures. It is a long poem that contains the essential moral teachings of Hindu thought, and in particular about what is duty in a time of war. One of the core moral issues of this film, Oppenheimer, both real war and more metaphorically the struggles of life. What is one's duty when confronted with difficulties in life? It's widely referred to as a kind of a standalone poem, but in fact it's a small part of a much longer epic poem, the Mahabharata. The Bhagavad Gita, there you can see, is this relatively short book And there is the Mahabharata, a much longer book, but it is within this book that the Bhagavad Gita appears. The poem, the Mahabharata, describes a great war, Mahabharata, a climactic war between two groups or families or dynasties or states in ancient India. To simplify, one of the great works of literature, I guess, anywhere in the world, one group is led by a figure called Arjuna, and who is advised by a deity, semi-human, semi-god figure, Krishna. And the Bhagavad Gita is the song of advice sung by Krishna to Arjuna at a really critical moment of this cataclysmic war, when two vast armies are actually facing each other on the field of battle. Why does Krishna sing a song of advice at this decisive moment, and why does this song become one of the most important Indian texts? At this decisive moment, Arjuna has an attack of doubt, an attack of moral qualms, an attack almost, I guess, in contemporary terms, of imposter syndrome. Arjuna does not want to wage war against these people, even if they are his rivals or his enemies. He doubts his capacity to act, and he fears for the outcome of the action. Krishna, who is divine but takes many forms and so is known by other names, including Vishnu, urges him to do his duty, to act in the right way, regardless of the fruits of the action. And since in this moment his duty is to fight this war that he cannot avoid, that is what must be done. So Krishna takes on the form of Vishnu and says, I am become death, destroyer of worlds, but also with the knowledge of those listening to this story that this is also a symbol of creative destruction, not senseless devastation. And this is the essential teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, of Dharma. And it is a beautiful poem that everyone should read. And back in the 1960s and 1970s, indeed in Germany in the 19th and 20th centuries, it was widely read as a source of inspiration for peace movements and whatnot. But how does Christopher Nolan present this text in Oppenheimer? Well, he does so sensationally in Games of Thrones style in the midst of a wild, passionate sex scene. So you can see, without going into details or any spoilers about the film, that there may be a case that this scene distorts or disrespects or misrepresents Indian culture, Indian thought, and arguably misuses Indian sacred traditions and its culture. And so you can understand why there would be some sensitivity, given the content especially of the film. It might be that the film presents this text without the moral complexity of this situation, which you can see in some ways does indeed echo Oppenheimer's own personal dilemma, and he himself could read Sanskrit to some degree and was familiar with these works. Whether he was deeply understanding and appreciative of them, I do not know. Oppenheimer's moral struggle is often justified as destruction to defeat an evil opponent. Many German intellectuals in the first half of the 20th century actually had quite a strong obsession with Hinduism and were more understanding of it. And famously, of course, German political figures from the 1930s, 1940s misappropriated a classic Indian symbol, the swastika. Is Oppenheimer a similar act of cultural misappropriation, or is it an artistic representation or dramatization of the tormented Faustian conscience of Oppenheimer? In the words that Oppenheimer himself used to describe his moral scruples. That is the question you can debate with your friends. But please listen, whatever you do, to what the people in India are actually saying about it, because this text, the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata, are incredibly important in Indian culture. Does the use of one line from the Bhagavad Gita in the film misrepresent Hindu and Indian culture, especially in the context of World War II, or does it dramatize the moral conscience of an American Prometheus who regretted but never recanted becoming the destroyer of worlds? American Prometheus is the name of the book on which Christopher Nolan constructed his biopic. Some say that this film is the best biopic ever made. Others say that the mythology of Oppenheimer is a deep misunderstanding of the history of World War II and of the weapons of mass destruction. Indeed, in 2018, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, which has done an enormous amount to campaign against the use and the effects of nuclear weapons and keeps the nuclear clock, the 5 minutes or 30 seconds or 20 seconds or 9 seconds to midnight of risk of nuclear war. In 2018, it wrote in response to the publication of the book American Prometheus that the mythologizing of Oppenheimer misunderstands this history. They said it is worth asking why one man, Robert Oppenheimer, the director of the Los Alamos laboratory at the time, should emerge from such a rich and crowded field of candidates, all the many people who were involved in the Manhattan Project, as the central figure of what is arguably the single most important historic development of the 20th century. It's worth asking as well if his early understanding of the consequences of the explosive release of nuclear energy stands up to the years of history since his time. Whatever you think about Oppenheimer, do use your viewing of this major film to think mindfully about history. And if you would like to learn more about how to think mindfully about history, like, share and subscribe to the Burning Archive and check out some of my other videos suggested here at the Burning Archive. I'll see you in another video soon.